Before we get into today's show, let me tell you about HubSpot. If you're hustling in the trenches to build a business or bootstrapping one of your own, let's talk about an AI-powered tool that can lighten up your workload a bit. HubSpot's Campaign Assistant is a game changer for creating marketing campaigns at scale. It quickly turns your key selling points into a cohesive pitch, which helps you deliver knockout emails, ads, and landing pages in minutes. So let Campaign Assistant take care of the campaigns so you can get back to growing your business. Work smarter, not harder at HubSpot.com/campaign-assistant.
Good morning, everyone. It's Friday, July 21st. I'm Mark Dent here with Juliet, Bennett, Rylah, and you're listening to the Hustle Daily Show. On tap for today, your rent, and specifically how the United States is beginning to crack down on junk fees that can make renting hell. But first, let's talk about everything else that's happening in the world of business and tech. First up, there's yet another tool that may upend media. Google is testing out a new tool for journalists called Genesis. It can write news stories. But what does that mean exactly? Well, it appears that Genesis has the capability to consume information that a journalist has reported and then spit it out into something that is at least adequately readable at this point. Up next, Amazon. The e-commerce giant announced it will launch pay-by-palm technology at all of its Whole Foods locations this year. That means you'll be able to pay for your overpriced saffron threads simply by hovering your palm over an Amazon device. Also, there's somebody who can absolutely afford those really overpriced saffron threads. On Wednesday night, a Californian won Powerball's $1.08 billion jackpot. In other news, Maybelline and Microsoft are partnering on 12 beauty features that users can try on during their Teams meetings. Also, the Electric Boat Racing League, known as E1, is picking up speed. Legendary quarterback Tom Brady just purchased a team on the league's circuit. He joins tennis great Rafael Nadal as an owner. And finally, casual Fridays are getting even more casual. A Wall Street Journal survey revealed that a slim majority of respondents think it's fine to wear shorts and a baseball cap to the office. Sandals, however, are still a no-go. Some 56% of people say they absolutely do not want to see your feet in the break room. All right, let's move on to the main story, which is that the rent is still too damn high. Per USA Today, the national median monthly rent is just over $2,000. That's about the same as it was last summer, but it's nearly $300 more than it was 2 years ago. And sometimes the rent is not the only thing you're paying as a tenant. Landlords often charge something known as junk fees, which can total anywhere from a few dollars to a few $100s. Now, we've talked about junk fees related to vacation rentals, hello Airbnb, and that absurd cleaning fee, and some other industries. But Juliet, what are junk fees in the rental market?
Basically, we're talking anything that you have to pay that is not your rent. So application fees, extra money for trash collection, mail sorting, that little fee you pay, convenience fee, I think they call it, when you pay online.
Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah, your pet deposit, your $500 pet deposit because you have a couple cats. All of those sorts of things are what we're talking about here.
Yeah, so these junk fees, they've been around for a while. I think at the last place that I rented, we had to pay somewhere in the ballpark of $40 or $50 a month for trash removal. And then they came up with these absurd rules where we could only put our trash out 2 days out of the week between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. And then they'd fine us if we put it out by 10 a.m.
Oh, yeah. I used to have a place like that too.
Yeah. I mean, it's just become so ingrained that these fees are part of our lives. But it sounds like the White House is potentially trying to change that. I know that the White House has been looking at junk fees in a lot of ways. And what have they announced here just recently with regards to junk fees for rent?
Right. So they came out with a couple of things. There's no blanket hey, we're going to force property owners to do X. But they did come out with kind of a crackdown in which they talked about how there's new research from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. That is just kind of research. If you want to go read it, I guess it's kind of interesting. But more specifically, one thing they mentioned was, and this is akin to what Airbnb has done recently, 3 platforms that list rental units, apartment.com, Zillow, and affordablehousing.com. They are all going to start listing the monthly cost, like what it actually costs per month for you to live in a particular unit up front. And that would also include any sort of upfront fees like your security deposit, as well as recurring fees such as parking, or I don't know, some apartment complexes make you pay for amenities like it's a hotel now. So all of that. That will help when you're looking for a place to live that you can actually afford. It's really hard to comparison shop, but I think this is very similar to hotels. Like you look at what it costs. Let's say you're going to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is like the most notorious place for this, I think.
Yeah.
You're looking at a hotel. You see one that's $150, you see one that's $125, and you're like, oh, cool, I'll go with the cheaper one. But then when you factor in the resort fee and having to pay for Wi-Fi and having to pay for parking and blah, 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 it's like taking a Spirit Airlines flight and then it turns out you have to pay to check a bag. That's actually not the price you're paying. And I think the big difference here is that, you know, a lot of us, most of us, we do not spend the bulk of our income on vacations or Ticketmaster fees, but we do spend it on housing. So yeah. I think cracking down on this kind of stuff is pretty relatable and something that will impact more of us.
Yeah. So essentially, these first steps are for some of these major websites and companies that aggregate available rentals.
Right.
When we start looking at those, we're just going to see the whole thing now, and we won't be surprised, at least, by the junk fees.
Right. So hopefully we'll have more transparency and we'll get to start to see how ridiculous some of these fees are. There was one group that found a property that was charging an extra fee in January, like a January fee.
New year, new fee.
Yeah. There was a guy in Seattle who said he received a notification fee. He apparently had potted plants on his balcony, which was something that was allowed in his lease. He got a notice telling him that now that was not allowed and he had to get rid of his plants or put them somewhere else. And then they also charged him $75 for the notice, for like the act of processing and sending this stupid letter. So stuff like that is going to be more transparent. And then I think my guess is where this is actually more actionable is at the state level. And so in that announcement about cracking down on the fees, there were also a bunch of different states that had enacted various laws and regulations. I'll just give you a few examples. A Colorado bill was to reuse an application across multiple properties for up to 30 days. If you have ever been looking for an apartment, you know that you may have to apply to more than one because you might not get the first one that you want. And every time you do, you have to fill out an application and oftentimes pay a fee that's allegedly for a background and credit check. Sometimes those fees are more than what it actually costs to run the background and credit check, which brings us to Rhode Island, which limited the application fees to no more than the actual cost. Minnesota is now requiring landlords to display the total monthly payments on the first page of the lease and an advertisement, so it's not confusing to anyone. That's more in line with what these platforms are doing. So hopefully, if you are a renter and you are struggling with these fees or very annoyed by them, you'll see similar actions happening in your state.
Yeah. Okay. So we will wait and see if renting does become a little bit less expensive soon. And that's going to do it for us today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Hustle Daily Show. We're a proud part of the HubSpot podcast network. Our editor today is Robert Hartwig, and our executive producer is Darren Clarke. We've got a lot more tech and business coverage in our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, go get yourself signed up at thehustle.co/email. We'll catch you next week.
Let me tell you about a show that I've been loving lately. It's called Entrepreneurs on Fire. It's hosted by the incredible John Lee Dumas. It's available now on the HubSpot podcast network. Entrepreneurs on Fire stokes inspiration and shares strategies to fire up your entrepreneurial journey and create the life that you've always dreamed of. I'm a big fan of this podcast. It has energy, it has value, and it's all about learning about entrepreneurship. I was just listening to an episode the other day. JLD interviewed Jay Rogers, who was such a wealth of information. He kind of went into how entrepreneurship chooses you. You don't necessarily choose it, and that failure only happens when you stop trying to win. A lot of gems in this one. So I highly recommend checking out that particular episode along with the rest. So go listen to Entrepreneurs on Fire wherever you get your podcasts. Hey guys, if you listen to the Hustle Daily Show on Google Podcasts, we want to let you know that the option will no longer be available pretty soon. Google is sunsetting its podcast app sometime in early 2024 in favor of YouTube Music, and we want to give you a heads up before it's too late, since that time's almost here. The Hustle Daily Show is available everywhere and anywhere that you listen to podcasts, like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you're using YouTube Music, we are there as well. If you're an Android fan, there are plenty of apps like Overcast, Pocket Casts, Player FM, and more. So just search for us wherever you decide to listen to your favorite podcasts.